There was once a young man named Daniel who lived in the heart of Chicago. If you had met him 5 years ago, you would have seen a restless soul, always chasing, always worrying, always trying to force life into the shape he thought it should be. When business was slow, Daniel panicked. When someone criticized him, he carried the wound for weeks. And when plans fell apart, he felt as though his entire future had collapsed. He believed peace would come only when everything around him was under his control. But life had a way of teaching Daniel a lesson that no book, no teacher, and no sermon could drive deep enough into his heart, until he learned it by experience. The hook, a strange merchant in the marketplace. One chilly morning, Daniel walked through the busy marketplace of his neighborhood. Vendors shouted, customers bargained, carts rattled on the cobblestone street. Two merchants caught his eye. The first was frantic. His stall had fewer customers that day, and he was in a frenzy, lowering prices, begging people to stop, throwing words of desperation into the air. Please, please, don't pass me by. I'll give you a discount. I'll go out of business. Daniel's heart sank watching him. The man's desperation seemed to push people further away. Then Daniel noticed the second merchant, just a few stalls down. This man stood behind his goods with quiet dignity. He greeted every passerby with a gentle smile, not hurried, not anxious, not shaken by the flow of the day. His table looked no different from the first man's, but customers seemed naturally drawn to him. Daniel stood puzzled. Why him? Why not the other? It was then that he realized something powerful. The calm merchant carried an unseen strength. His composure was his magnet. That day, Daniel discovered the first principle of what I call inner mastery. Backhand index pointing right. Peace does not come from control. It comes from composure. The illusion of control. Most people live like the first merchant. They believe if they could only control every detail, every outcome, every opinion, every circumstance, then they would finally have peace. But that is an illusion. Storms will always come. Obstacles will always rise. No amount of anxious grasping will prevent them. You can rage at the rain, but the clouds will not part. You can curse the wind, but it will not change direction. What you lose is not the storm, but your peace. The calm merchant knew something most people don't. Your greatest power is not in stopping every hardship, but in deciding how you meet it. This is the first secret Daniel had to learn on his journey. A lesson from the oak tree. That evening, as Daniel walked home, he noticed an old oak tree standing tall at the edge of the park. Its leaves shook under the autumn wind, but its trunk remained steady. The oak did not tremble at the weather. It did not uproot itself to escape the storm. It stood firm, as if saying, "You may shake my branches, but you cannot shake me." Daniel thought, this is how I must learn to live. Napoleon Hill once wrote that the strongest men and women are not those who never feel fear or doubt, but those who refuse to let those feelings direct their actions. True composure is not the absence of emotion, it is the mastery of it. Training the mind for stillness. But how does one achieve such calmness? Daniel discovered it through small, daily practices. When someone criticized him, instead of defending or quarreling, he began to smile inwardly and remind himself, their words cannot touch who I really am. When plans fell apart, he whispered silently, this is not the end of the road. It's only a bend. When anxiety rushed into his chest, he trained himself to breathe deeply and steadily, as if nothing was wrong. This told his mind, all is well, even when life disagrees. It was not easy. Some days, Daniel slipped back into worry and anger. But each time he remembered the oak tree, each time he pictured the calm merchant, he chose again to act as if nothing could disturb him. And slowly, a miracle happened. He noticed that his calmness not only gave him strength, it began to attract new opportunities, new trust, and new respect. Just like the merchant in the marketplace, Daniel's composure became a silent magnet. A story of a lost job. Not long after, Daniel met an older man at the library who shared a powerful story. Years earlier, the man had lost his job after decades of loyal service. Everyone expected him to panic. Friends rushed to console him, neighbors worried for his future. But he walked calmly through each day, tending his garden, reading books, speaking kindly to all he met. He neither complained nor hurried. He lived as if life itself was preparing something better for him, and indeed it was. His calmness caught the attention of a new employer, who offered him a higher position than before. The man looked at Daniel and said, peace was my shield. Composure was my ladder. Had I panicked like everyone else expected, I would have sunk. Instead, calmness lifted me higher. That story struck Daniel like lightning. The first pillar of inner mastery. From that day, Daniel made a vow. I will no longer waste my strength on controlling storms I cannot stop. I will master my own calm. Nothing and no one will disturb my peace. And that, dear reader, is the beginning of his transformation. The calmest people are not those who live without challenges. They are the ones who decide challenges will not touch their spirit. This is the first pillar of the 6-part journey you and I are about to take together. And if you hold fast to it, you will discover, as Daniel did, that composure is strength, peace is power, and calmness is a magnet for everything you desire. Fire coming in part 2, Daniel faces the second great enemy of peace, the crushing weight of other people's opinions. And he will learn how to rise above them, just as Napoleon Hill taught, by building an inner compass stronger than any voice around him. White heavy check mark. That's part 1, 1,000 words, written in story style inspired by Napoleon Hill, simple American English, motivational, and engaging. The Secret of Calm Power, part 2, the burden of opinions and the power of silent strength. Hook. The woman who chose to paint in a quiet little town outside of St. Louis lived a woman named Margaret. From the time she was a girl, she loved to paint. She saw colors where others saw walls, and she felt beauty where others saw nothing special. But her family laughed at her dream. Painting won't put food on the table. Her brother scoffed. Her neighbors whispered, "What a waste of time." For years, she carried their disapproval like stones in her pockets. Every time she lifted a brush, their voices echoed in her mind until she could not paint at all. Then one day, tired of living small under the weight of others' opinions, she whispered to herself, "Enough." She picked up her brush again, not because her critics changed, but because she decided their opinions no longer mattered, and in time, they truly didn't. The same neighbors who once mocked her lined up to buy her art. The same family who dismissed her now praised her talent. Margaret had discovered what all peaceful people eventually learn: opinions are like clouds. They pass overhead. They may cast shadows, but they cannot change the solid ground beneath your feet. The prison of opinions. Daniel, the young man we met earlier, was still learning this lesson. He often found himself trapped by what others thought of him. He dressed to please, spoke to please, and even chose work he disliked just to avoid disapproval. But as Napoleon Hill once wrote, "If you live by the praise of others, you will also die by their criticism." Daniel began to see the truth. He realized that when you live for every passing opinion, you live like a ship tossed by every wave. You never steer your own course, you only drift where others push you. It was then he decided, "My worth is not up for debate. I will not surrender my joy to the whispers of the crowd." The oak tree's example. Daniel remembered the oak tree from the park, the one that stood steady in the storm. It did not bend itself to every wind. It grew according to its nature, rooted deeply, reaching toward the sun. "Let me be like that oak," Daniel thought. "Let me stand firm no matter what people say." And so, when someone criticized his choices, he learned to nod gently, as though they were describing the weather. When friends mocked his dreams, he smiled inwardly and reminded himself, "Their voices cannot touch who I am becoming." He discovered something extraordinary. The less he reacted, the stronger he felt. The power of silent strength. Still, Daniel had another lesson to learn, about the power of silence. For most of his life, he believed strength meant being loud, forceful, always ready to prove himself. But he soon discovered this was false. True strength is quiet. True authority is calm. Consider the mountain. Storms lash its peak, but it does not shout at the wind. It does not argue with the rain. Its power lies in its unshakable stillness. Daniel realized that the greatest forces in life, gravity, time, growth, work silently, without fanfare. So he decided to test this principle. A test of composure at work. A coworker once accused Daniel unfairly of making a costly mistake. Others raised their voices, throwing blame and anger. Daniel felt the heat rise in his chest. He wanted to defend himself, to argue, to fight back. But instead, he breathed slowly. He remembered the oak tree. He remembered the mountain. He chose silence. Days later, the truth came out. Daniel was innocent. Those who accused him looked small and ashamed. And Daniel? He walked away with his dignity untouched, his peace unbroken. In that moment, he understood, truth needs no shouting. Innocence needs no defense. Character speaks louder than any words. Guarding your energy. Daniel also learned why composure matters so much. Each angry outburst, every quarrel, every wasted argument drains your energy, like pouring water from a precious well onto the ground. Once it's gone, you cannot get it back. But when you remain calm, you save every drop of energy for what really matters, your growth, your goals, your vision. Napoleon Hill often reminded his students, guard your mind as you would guard a treasure chest. Daniel finally understood why. Practicing the discipline of calm, so Daniel began to train himself daily, treating every provocation as an exercise. If someone spoke rudely, he paused before replying. If plans collapsed, he whispered, "This is not the end of the journey." If anger boiled inside, he let his breath hold it back until he could release it wisely. It wasn't easy. At times he slipped. But with each test, he grew stronger. Every critic, every challenge, every insult became his gymnasium. Each was a chance to lift the weight of self-control and build the muscle of composure. A worker's story. Daniel also recalled the story of an older worker he once met, a man falsely accused of negligence. His accusers shouted, but he stood silently, eyes steady, heart calm. When the truth was revealed, he was cleared of all charges, while his accusers lost their credibility. Years later, no one remembered the noise of the accusers. But everyone remembered the silent strength of that man. Daniel carried that image with him. He wanted to live like that. Conclusion of Part 2. By now, Daniel had learned two great truths of inner mastery. 1. Peace comes not from control, but from composure. Point 2. The opinions of others cannot disturb you unless you hand them the power. And along the way, he discovered the power of silent strength. That quiet authority is often greater than any loud defense. He was no longer the restless man who trembled at every setback. He was becoming something greater, calm, unshaken, quietly powerful. Fire coming in. Part 3. Daniel faces his hardest test yet, the fire of pain and failure. He will learn that peace is not found by avoiding hardship, but by turning pain into power. White heavy check mark. That's Part 2. Almost equals 1,000 words, rewritten into a Napoleon Hill style story, easy American English, with an engaging hook and motivational flow. Would you like me to continue straight into Part 3, turning pain into power, or should I adjust the storytelling style even more, for example, making Daniel's journey more like a full narrative novel? Part 3, the power of detachment and inner dialogue. Let me tell you a story about a merchant in a bustling American town nearly a century ago. His name was Samuel. He had built his business from the ground up, brick by brick, handshake by handshake. One summer evening, a fire swept through the district, destroying his warehouse and most of his goods. Neighbors expected him to collapse in grief. Instead, Samuel stood calmly, watching the smoke rise into the sky. He said, "If I built it once, I can build it again." Within 2 years, Samuel's business was larger and stronger than before. What gave him this resilience? Detachment. Now, when I say detachment, I don't mean coldness or lack of feeling. I mean the ability to care deeply without letting circumstances control your peace. Samuel loved his work, but he wasn't chained to the results. His wealth was not in his inventory but in his mindset. He knew that no fire could burn away his knowledge, his determination, or his vision. This is the wisdom of detachment, caring without controlling, loving without possessing. When you live this way, life cannot shake you so easily. Losses, rejections, disappointments, they may sting, but they cannot unseat your peace. Too many people misunderstand detachment. They think it means shutting off the heart, as if to feel less is to suffer less. But the truth is the opposite. The detached person feels more fully, more richly, because they are not constantly guarding against pain. They can love without fear of loss, work without the choking pressure of failure, and dream without the desperate need to control every outcome. Picture a gardener. He waters his plants, pulls weeds, and tends to the soil. Some flowers bloom beautifully, while others wither despite his care. The gardener does not rage at the sky or curse the ground. He understands that life is larger than his will. And because he accepts this, he enjoys every bloom as a gift, not a guarantee. Now let me ask you, are you chained to every outcome in your life? Do you rejoice only when things go your way? If so, you are a prisoner of chance. The world will toss you about like a leaf in the wind. But if you can smile even when the world denies you, then no circumstance can rob you of joy. That is freedom. Life will never bow to your every demand. Weather shifts whether you approve or not. People make choices you cannot control. Opportunities appear and disappear with timing beyond your command. The person who insists these forces obey their desires lives in constant frustration. But the one who acts with full effort and accepts whatever follows knows a peace that cannot be taken away. This principle applies to love, to friendship, to business. You cannot force someone to stay in your life, to love you, or to agree with you. But you can control how deeply you love, how genuinely you treat others, and how gracefully you accept their choices. A parent who demands perfection from a child, a friend who requires constant attention, a worker who cannot tolerate criticism, all of them surrender their happiness to things beyond their control. So what can you do? Begin each day with this simple rule: give your best, but release your need to own the results. If you fail, treat it as a lesson. If you succeed, be grateful without pride. Walk as though no outside force can disturb your balance. When you help someone, do it without expecting thanks. When you give kindness, don't demand it in return. When you work, pour yourself into it without clinging to the outcome. Each time you do this, you break another chain that binds your happiness to circumstances. Consider this: sometimes setbacks are not punishments but redirections. The job you didn't get may have saved you from years of misery. The relationship that ended may have cleared the way for something far greater. The plan that failed may have opened a door you didn't know was there. Detachment allows you to see these hidden blessings. Now, let's turn to another secret of peace, one many overlook: your inner dialogue. I want you to remember this line. It can change your life. Your inner voice is the architect of your destiny. Most people believe it's the words they speak aloud that matter most. But the truth is, it's the silent conversation you hold with yourself day and night. That voice can be your strongest ally or your cruelest enemy. Imagine two houses. From the outside, they look the same. But one stands firm in storms while the other cracks with the first strong wind. The difference lies in the foundation. Your inner dialogue is that foundation. If it's weak, the smallest setback will shake you. If it's strong, even the fiercest storm will not topple you. Think about the words you feed yourself daily. Do you tell yourself that life is hard, that people can't be trusted, that success is unlikely? If so, your mind, obedient as it is, will seek proof of those beliefs. Every challenge will confirm your fears. But if you train your inner voice to speak strength, courage, and possibility, the world looks different. Opportunities appear. People seem less threatening. Challenges become manageable. I once met an artist who faced rejection after rejection. Most people would have given up. But he carried a phrase in his heart: "This is shaping me, not stopping me." He spoke it to himself every time he heard "no." That single line preserved his peace, sharpened his skill, and eventually led him to recognition. His success began not with talent alone, but with the words he spoke to himself. Your inner dialogue is creating your future. So what should you do? Start by noticing it. Many people discover they speak to themselves more harshly than they would ever speak to a friend. They call themselves failures, predict disaster, and rehearse their worst fears. Awareness is the first step. The second step is replacement. Instead of saying, "I can't handle this," say, "I've overcome before, I will again." Instead of, "This always happens to me," say, "This is temporary, and I'll find a way through." And never underestimate gratitude. Begin each day by quietly naming 3 things you are thankful for. Gratitude reshapes the mind, teaching it to see what is good even in hard times. Over weeks and months, this habit builds a foundation of peace that cannot be shaken. Detachment and inner dialogue, these 2 forces together can transform your life. One frees you from being a prisoner of outcomes. The other frees you from being a prisoner of your own mind. Together, they create a fortress of peace, built not of stone, but of thought and perspective. Remember Samuel, the merchant. The fire destroyed his goods, but it could not destroy him. Why? Because his wealth was not just in his warehouse, it was in his mind, his heart, his detachment, and his inner voice. He spoke strength to himself, and strength became his reality. That same power is available to you. Practice detachment. Train your inner dialogue. And you, too, will discover that no storm, no fire, no rejection can take away your peace or your power. Here's part 3, rewritten in a Napoleon Hill, inspired, story-driven style with simple, engaging language for American readers. Part 4, turning pain into power. Life, my friend, is a teacher with strange methods. It doesn't knock politely on your door and say, "Excuse me, may I show you a lesson?" No. It barges in, often uninvited, with storms, setbacks, and disappointments. And while most people spend their days cursing the storm, the wise learn to ride it. I want to tell you the story of a man I once knew. We'll call him John. John had what many would call a comfortable life, a steady job, a good family, a home that kept the rain out. But one day, everything he leaned upon crumbled. The company he worked for downsized, and overnight, he was unemployed. His savings vanished quickly, and his friends, the ones who once cheered his success, grew strangely quiet. He stood at the edge of despair, convinced life had turned against him. But John discovered something extraordinary. He realized that pain, while heavy, could be lifted, and when lifted, it built muscles of the spirit. Instead of drowning in his hardship, he began asking himself new questions. What can I learn here? What strength is this experience trying to forge within me? That shift in thinking changed everything. He treated his unemployment not as a curse, but as an opportunity. He studied, learned new skills, and built a small business from scratch. The same failure that once threatened to destroy him became the fuel that pushed him into independence. Years later, John became known in his town not as the man who lost his job, but as the man who built something far greater from the ashes. This is the secret I want to pass on to you. Pain is not your enemy, it is your forge. Think of the blacksmith's shop. There, raw iron is useless until it is placed into the fire. The heat is unbearable, the hammer strikes are relentless, and the process looks destructive. But in truth, it is transformation. The iron that survives becomes steel, strong, valuable, ready to serve a purpose. So it is with you. The blows life delivers are not punishments. They are tests of your capacity to grow. Without them, you would remain brittle, fragile, unprepared for the demands of destiny. Here lies the great choice every person faces. Some allow pain to make them bitter. They complain, they blame, they surrender. Others allow pain to make them better. They absorb its lessons, sharpen their character, and emerge stronger than before. Which path you choose determines your destiny. I recall a young builder named David. He dreamed of constructing homes that would stand for generations. His first great project, however, collapsed in failure. People laughed. They told him he wasn't cut out for building. Many men would have quit then and there, but not David. He treated failure as his instructor. He studied what went wrong, rebuilt, and tried again. In time, his work grew so strong that even the harshest critics hired him to build their homes. Today, those houses still stand as proof that failure, when faced with courage, becomes the foundation of success. You see, peace is not about avoiding pain. That is a childish dream. Pain will come, no matter how carefully you plan your life. True peace is found in mastering pain, by refusing to let it disturb your inner calm. When you act as though your burdens cannot break you, you transform them into sources of power. Consider water. Gentle in a stream, soft to the touch, yet when heated into steam, it can drive great engines, move locomotives, and power industries. Your troubles are the same. Left unmanaged, they weigh you down like floodwaters. But transformed with the fire of your will, they become energy that drives you forward. The man who avoids hardship remains weak. He becomes like the tree that never felt the wind, which snaps at the first storm. But the man who embraces hardship builds roots deep into the soil of strength. He becomes unshakable. So how can you, today, turn your pain into power? 1. Ask the right question, instead of asking, "Why me?" Ask, "What lesson hides within this difficulty?" Pain is a teacher, search for its message. Point 2. Refuse to play the victim. Life owes you nothing. Every challenge is an invitation to grow. Accept it. Point 3. Practice with small pains. When someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of anger, practice patience. When criticized unfairly, instead of defending wildly, listen quietly. These small exercises prepare you for life's greater tests. Point 4. Carry yourself with dignity. Pain is powerless against a man who refuses to bow to it. Walk as though the burden is beneath you, not above you. I once met a man named Samuel who was accused falsely of neglect at work. His accusers shouted, yet he remained silent. He carried himself with calm authority, knowing the truth would stand without his defense. And indeed, the truth emerged. Those who had tried to ruin him were discredited, while Samuel's reputation only grew stronger. His pain became the very stage on which his strength was revealed. This is how character is built. Not in sunshine, not in comfort, but in storms, betrayals, and failures. Every scar can either be a mark of defeat or a badge of honor. It depends on the spirit wearing it. So I ask you, the next time pain comes knocking, and it surely will, what will you do? Will you collapse under its weight, or will you rise and make it your servant? Remember this truth, as certain as the sunrise. Those who embrace pain as their teacher discover a power within that no man, no loss, no storm can ever take away. The choice is yours. Backhand index pointing right. That completes part 4, turning pain into power in story-driven Napoleon Hill style. Would you like me to move straight into part 5? The discipline of detachment, 1000 words, story-driven. Next. Part 5. The discipline of detachment. There comes a moment in every man's journey when he discovers that the heaviest chains are not made of iron, but of attachment. It is not the world outside that imprisons us, it is the grip of our own desires, fears, and obsessions. Let me tell you a story. A young merchant named Thomas built his fortune through hard work and clever trade. He had warehouses full of goods, servants to carry out his orders, and a reputation as one of the wealthiest men in his city. But with all his riches came a secret misery. Every night, Thomas lay awake in fear that thieves would steal his treasures. He worried over markets, contracts, and rivals. His mind was a battlefield, and no amount of gold could buy him peace. One evening, an old traveler visited his shop. He noticed the merchant's frown and asked, "Why does a man with so much wealth look poorer than the beggars in the street?" Thomas replied bitterly, "Because I cannot rest. I guard my wealth day and night. If I lose it, I lose myself." The traveler smiled. "Then you are not the master of your fortune. Your fortune is the master of you." Those words struck Thomas like thunder. For the first time, he realized his prison was not built by others, but by his own attachment. This is the truth every wise man learns. What you cling to too tightly begins to control you. Detachment is not about abandoning the world or living without possessions. No. Detachment is mastery. It is the ability to hold the things of this world with open hands, using them, enjoying them, but never being ruled by them. Think of the eagle. It soars high because it does not clutch the earth. Its wings are free. Yet it sees all, and when the time is right, it descends with precision. The eagle is detached, and in its detachment lies its strength. Many people live as Thomas did, prisoners of their attachments. Some are chained to money. Others are bound to the approval of friends or society. Still others are slaves to habits, desires, or even fears. They clutch these chains so tightly that they bleed, never realizing that the key to freedom is already in their hands, the discipline of detachment. Consider a man who loves praise. He glows when people admire him, but he withers when they criticize. He becomes a puppet, dancing to the strings of opinion. Only when he detaches from both praise and blame does he become free to act with true power. I once knew a teacher who embodied this principle. His name was Jonathan. He lived simply, never chasing wealth or applause. His students loved him, not because he sought their approval, but because he carried himself with calm independence. When people praised him, he bowed his head in humility. When they criticized him unfairly, he smiled and carried on his work. His peace was untouchable, because it did not depend on the shifting winds of opinion. Jonathan was free. Now you may ask, how can I practice detachment in my own life? The answer is both simple and difficult. You must learn to let go without losing your purpose. Here are 4 steps to begin. 1. Master your thoughts. Each time you feel fear of loss, stop and remind yourself, I came into this world with nothing. I shall leave with nothing. What I have today is a gift, not a chain. 2. Use things, do not serve them. Money, status, possessions, these are tools, not masters. When you find yourself clinging, loosen your grip. Ask, am I using this, or is it using me? 3. Detach from outcomes. Do your best, but release the need to control results. Plant the seed, water it faithfully, and let nature take its course. Worrying over the harvest does not make it grow faster. 4. Detach from opinion. Praise and blame are both fleeting. Do not be swayed by either. Instead, build your character on inner principles that no man can take away. Let me share another story. A farmer named Elias once entered his crops in a fair. His neighbors mocked him, saying, "Why try? Your fields are too small. You cannot win." Elias smiled, entered anyway, and worked hard without concern for what others thought. On the day of the fair, he neither hoped too strongly for victory nor feared failure. To his surprise, his crops won first prize. Yet Elias did not boast. He simply returned home, plowed his land, and carried on. That is detachment, engaging fully in the game of life, but never allowing the outcome to disturb your inner balance. Napoleon Hill himself often spoke of a principle hidden in every successful man's story. They never tied their self-worth to riches, failures, or opinions. Henry Ford lost fortunes, yet built again. Thomas Edison faced thousands of failures, yet smiled through them. Why? Because they were detached from the blows of fortune. Their eyes were fixed on purpose, not possessions. Detachment gives you a strange kind of power, the power to act boldly because you are no longer afraid to lose. When you fear nothing, nothing can control you. Think of the soldier who charges forward not because he loves danger, but because he has already detached from the fear of death. That courage makes him unstoppable, and so it is with you. When you detach from loss, rejection, or failure, you become free to pursue greatness without hesitation. Do not mistake detachment for coldness. A detached man still loves, still cares, still builds, still dreams. The difference is that he does so without clinging. He loves without fear of losing. He builds without fear of collapse. He dreams without fear of disappointment. His joy is rooted not in possessions or outcomes, but in the strength of his inner spirit. Thomas, the young merchant, finally understood this. He began to live differently. He still traded goods, still built his business, but he no longer lived in fear of loss. When thieves once robbed his warehouse, his neighbors expected rage and despair. Instead, Thomas said calmly, "They have taken only goods. They cannot touch my peace." And indeed, his peace remained. In time, his calmness made him wiser in business, more trusted by others, and more content in himself. His wealth grew, but his true treasure was freedom. This is the lesson: detachment is not poverty. Detachment is power. When you master this discipline, you will discover a new kind of wealth, the wealth of peace, strength, and unshakable calm. The storms of life will still blow, but you will stand like the mountain, untouched, unmoved, unbroken. So ask yourself now, what chain holds you? What desire, fear, or attachment rules you in secret? When you find it, loosen your grip. Release it, and you will rise higher than you ever thought possible. Because only the free can climb to greatness. And freedom begins with detachment. Backhand index pointing right. That completes part 5, The Discipline of Detachment in Napoleon Hill, inspired story style. Would you like me to continue with the final part 6, 1000 words, story driven? Part 6, The Crown of Mastery. Every great journey must arrive at its summit. And every seeker who dares to climb must face the question, what is the ultimate reward of this path? Is it riches? Is it fame? Is it power? No. The true prize is mastery, mastery of self, mastery of thought, mastery of destiny. Let me tell you a final story. The king who could not rest. Long ago, there lived a mighty king named Adrian. His empire stretched as far as the horizon. His armies were strong, his palaces glittered with gold, and his subjects praised his name. Yet Adrian was restless. At night, he walked the marble halls of his palace unable to sleep. He feared betrayal, envied rivals, and longed for more land, more wealth, more glory. Though the crown rested on his head, his heart was heavy. One evening, disguised as a common man, he wandered the city streets. There he found an old craftsman seated by a lamp, humming a song while carving wood. The man's clothes were plain, his shop small, yet his face shone with peace. The king asked, "Old man, why do you sing? You have no riches, no servants, no crown. What makes you so content?" The craftsman replied, "Because I am master of myself. My hands do honest work. My heart holds no envy. My sleep is deep and my joy simple. Tell me, great stranger, can your crown give you the same?" Adrian was struck dumb. He returned to his palace in silence. For the first time, he realized the truth. A man who rules the world but cannot rule himself is no king at all. The final lesson, this, my friend, is the final lesson. All that we have spoken, the power of thought, the law of persistence, the strength of detachment, leads here, self-mastery. The greatest victory is not over rivals, not over fortune, not even over fate. It is the victory over self. Think of the men who shaped history. Napoleon Hill wrote of Andrew Carnegie, who built an empire of steel. But Carnegie's true genius was not his factories. It was his mind, disciplined and focused. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times, yet he triumphed because he mastered his own doubt. Henry Ford faced critics, setbacks, even ridicule, yet he held fast to his vision, unmoved by scorn. Each of these men wore the crown of mastery, and so must you. The battle within, perhaps you feel at war with yourself. One voice urges you forward, another holds you back. One part of you dreams, another doubts. You are both soldier and enemy in your own battle. Understand this: the battlefield of life is not outside, it is inside. If you conquer fear, defeat laziness, overcome doubt, and silence envy, then no outside force can stop you. But if you lose within, if fear rules you, if desire blinds you, if anger controls you, then all the wealth and power of the world cannot save you. As Napoleon Hill often reminded his readers, you are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. This is no empty phrase. It is a call to arms. The 3 crowns of mastery. When a man conquers himself, he gains 3 crowns more precious than any jewel. 1. The crown of peace. He no longer trembles at fortune's blows. Success does not intoxicate him. Failure does not break him. Like a calm lake, his spirit reflects light even in storm. 2. The crown of power. He acts with boldness, because fear no longer chains him. He sees clearly, because desire no longer blinds him. He commands respect, because he rules himself first. 3. The crown of purpose. He knows why he lives, and every step moves in that direction. He is not swayed by every opinion, not distracted by every temptation. His life becomes a single arrow aimed at greatness. The farmer's wisdom. There is an old parable of a farmer named Samuel. All his neighbors fought over land, chasing wealth and quarreling endlessly. But Samuel tended his small field with care, rising early, working diligently, never envying others. 1 year, drought came. Crops failed across the valley. Families despaired. But Samuel's land yielded grain, for he had dug deep wells and prepared long before. When his neighbors asked his secret, Samuel said, I did not fight others. I fought myself, against laziness, against greed, against waste. And that battle brought me victory. So it is with life. Those who master themselves are prepared for drought, storm, or famine. While others fall, they endure. The challenge for you now, my friend, the final challenge stands before you. Will you wear the crown of mastery, or will you remain a servant to your own doubts and desires? Ask yourself, do I control my thoughts, or do they control me? Do I act from purpose, or from fear of opinion? Do I use wealth and power, or do they use me? Your answers will tell you whether you rule your life, or whether your life rules you. Remember this truth: no man is free until he has conquered himself. A vision of tomorrow. Imagine yourself 10 years from today. You wake each morning with calm purpose. You face challenges boldly, not because the world is easier, but because you are stronger. Wealth may come, success may shine, recognition may follow, but none of these rule you. You are their master, not their servant. You walk through life with steady step, a king without a crown of gold, yet richer than all the monarchs of history. This is not fantasy. It is your destiny, if you dare to claim it. The call to greatness. And so, we close this journey where it began, with you. You hold in your hands the greatest power ever known, the power to shape your own mind, to master your own spirit, to rule your own destiny. Others may look for miracles outside themselves, but the wise man knows, the true miracle lies within. Therefore, stand tall. Speak these words to yourself. I am master of my thoughts. I am ruler of my spirit. I am captain of my destiny. Nothing outside me can defeat me, for I have conquered within. Say them not once, but daily. Say them until they burn in your heart. Live them until they shape your character. Then, and only then, will you know the crown of mastery, the final prize of life's great journey. And when you reach that summit, you will not merely live, you will lead, inspire, and leave behind a legacy that no storm, no time, no man can erase. That, my friend, is true greatness. White heavy checkmark. This completes part 6, The Crown of Mastery, the final chapter of your Napoleon Hill style series. If this message awakens something within you, don't let it end here. Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe so you never miss the next lesson in the journey of greatness. Backhand index pointing right. Share this with a friend who needs a spark of inspiration today. Backhand index pointing right. Comment below and tell us, what is the greatest battle you are fighting within yourself? Your words may be the key that helps another person rise. Together, we build a community of dreamers, doers, and masters of destiny.